provide any updates, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have 4 updates that are not already covered within this evening's agenda. The first is regarding Central Park. At March's meeting, it was agreed that the contract for the security and gate locking at Central Park would not be renewed after the current contract ends on the 31st of August, and that a working group would be established to consider the future position. The working group met earlier this month, and as a result, various options are now being explored with officers and Lincolnshire Police with a view to a report coming before committee. Although the committee has decided that the existing contract should not be renewed, Lincolnshire Police have since expressed concerns about the gates being unlocked, and the working group is considering a range of options for the future. The committee will shortly hear from Inspector Cotton with his update on policing in Boston, and then this issue can be considered further. The second action was regarding highways, and as I indicated last meeting, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be hearing from Lincolnshire County Council with regard to highway matters. All members of BTAC will be invited to those meetings, but to confirm at this stage, they are as follows. At the Overview and Scrutiny meeting of the 4th of September, the Lincolnshire County Council Highways portfolio holder, Councillor Chain, will attend. And at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting on the 2nd of October, Lincolnshire County Council's Road Safety Manager, Stephen Batchelor, will attend. The next item is the Community Governance Review Working Group. The working group has met on a number of occasions since the last BTAC meeting. The first public consultation was launched on the 14th of July, and Councillor Creswell gave an update to full council on the 21st of July. The consultation ends on the 28th of August, following which the working group will review the responses. A further update will be provided to the committee at its meeting on the 25th of September, which is before the recommendations will be made to full council and before the launch of the second round of consultation. The next item is the green flag. Regular working group meetings continue, and the group to date has developed its vision for Central Park along with specific aims and objectives. Group members have also contributed to a SWOT analysis, all of which has been incorporated into the green flag management plan and will be discussed and agreed at the next working group meeting scheduled for the 28th of July. The Neighbourhoods Operations Manager will also attend this meeting. The group members are currently working on compiling a detailed history of the Central Park to be included within the plan, along with an action plan based on the SWOT analysis of vision and objectives. There are still ongoing challenges relating to the written policies and procedures. However, we've been informed that there is a new neighbourhoods group manager for the partnership starting in October, who has prior experience within the Green Flag Award. An introduction to the working group will be arranged at the first opportunity, and this role will have the responsibility for producing the policies and procedures needed. And that concludes my update on actions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To answer any written questions received from members of the public before 5 p.m. on the 21st of July, are there any questions?
There are no public questions, Chair.
Right, so right, an update on crime and policing in Boston. Chairman, sorry. I'm pleased to confirm that Inspector Ian Cotton of Lincolnshire Police has agreed to provide us with an overview of crime and policing in Boston this evening. The Council's Community Safety Manager, Peter Hunn, is also present. This meeting provides Inspector Cotton with the opportunity to outline the current policing focus in Boston and the successes and challenges for policing in Boston town. It also provides an opportunity for members to ask Inspector Cotton questions after he has given his update. Democratic Services provided members with an opportunity to ask questions in advance. Councillors Gleeson, Izzard and Noble have done so, and copies of their questions are on the placements. In addition to providing response to those questions, after his update, members will have an opportunity to ask any further questions. Inspector Cotton, would you like to provide your updates, please?
Thank you, Pete. Madam Chairman, thank you. If it's okay with you, I will provide you with an update around our neighbourhood policing staffing as it is at the moment, around the issue with PCSOs and the reduction in PCSOs that we've had, and the rumours that have been going around about PCSO numbers, I'll talk about the neighbourhood policing survey, which some of you have completed tonight, and how that can help you and your the people that you represent have their views represented, and how they can influence our policing priorities. I'll talk about our current priorities and the challenges around those. I'll also touch upon the HMIC report and the Engage process. I'm sure there might be some questions about that before I move on to some questions that have been submitted. I'll try and be as brief as I can. I could be here for a couple of hours if you let me. So our neighbourhood policing staffing at the moment is good compared to some other areas. We have 4 community beat managers. We have 9 PCSO positions, but 10 bodies, if you like, because some are part-time. We have 3 beats that have PCSOs, the town centre, town east and rural west, as they were defined as vulnerable beats when we did a restructure a couple of years ago. We're very lucky in Boston that we have a resilience team of 3 PCSOs as well, in addition to those 6. So we're in a very good position because we're fully staffed compared to other areas of the county. And I think we're seeing some very good results from our neighbourhood policing team because of that, because in previous years that's not been the case. PCSOs were reduced a couple of years ago from around about 100 to 50. And that prompted that restructure with the vulnerable beats and where we were placing those PCSOs. That's caused quite a lot of angst amongst your communities because some communities aren't getting the service that they pay for. That might well be looked at in the future. But at the moment, that's as it stands. But what we do have in Boston is those 3 PCSOs surplus to the 6. That if we do get a problem on a non-vulnerable beat, they should be there to help problem solve any of those issues. So quite a fortunate position. Across the county, our establishment of PCSOs is 50. We currently have around 38. But with the situation that we're in financially at the moment, there's no plans to recruit back up to 50. That will be considered once the funding decisions are made for the force as a whole, and I think that's probably going to be next year. So on reflection, we've got some really good, strong staffing in neighbourhood policing, but unfortunately, that's not the case in some of our other departments. So we have our 999 response team in Boston, and unfortunately they're understaffed, which means our CBMs, when they should be doing local work for your communities, are actually answering the 999 calls for about 40% of their time. That's a position that we can't avoid at the moment. It's not going to get better very quickly. We do have a recruitment ongoing, but it takes time for them to be trained. We know that a certain number of those are coming to Boston, and hopefully that will free up some more time for our community beat managers to be out in their communities and doing the work that they should be doing on the problem solving, the priorities that the communities raise. But that's going to take a little while. Before the meeting, I was harassing you to fill out our neighbourhood policing survey. There's a QR code for anybody who hasn't completed it. That is a survey that allows us to take the pulse of our communities. It's newly introduced this year. We hope that we get hundreds of replies to that survey in order to get a good reflection of our community's feeling as to what they want us to target. This time round, we had over 250 responses in Spalding and nearly 200 in Boston, which is good, but not quite as good as it could be. So please, if I have one appeal, it's could you get that survey out there? It talks about feelings of safety in the community. It allows us to drill down even to street level as to how people are feeling within our community and what they want us to concentrate on. There's a word cloud there, there's patterns, there's all sorts of stuff that we can take from that and set our policing priorities according to the wishes of our community, which gives us that legitimacy. And that's what neighbourhood policing is all about. So I implore if we could get that survey out there and get as many filled out as possible, that would really help us. We've had that survey out and the priority setting was last month. The current priorities for Boston are tackling street drinking in Boston in the PSPO area. That's coincided with the street wardens being trained again, and there's a little gap there, so we need to keep tackling that issue in Boston. I mean, the community rangers, as they were, the street ones, that did an absolutely brilliant job. Fantastic. Like, was it over 500?
900.
900
yeah.
was it? Interactions with people, which shows that there is still that deep-seated problem within Boston. But having that as a priority, we can work with the Community Alcohol Partnership, licensing, which I will remind myself to talk about in a second. Go down the enforcement routes with the community protection notices for those who work with the homeless team, try and get people support who are presenting in that sort of manner. So that's a priority for the next 3 months, and we've already started that work. And also we're looking at trying to train up people so they're really comfortable in those processes. Officers that often haven't had an input from neighbourhood policing and our response that they don't necessarily know the details of our PSPO, and we need to get that detail out there so they can deal with this in the same way that your neighbourhood policing team does. Second priority was tackling vehicle nuisance. That was a priority 3 months ago and has continued for the next 3 months. In Boston and the surrounding areas, we've put in place Operation Exhaust with our roads policing unit, tackling anything from noisy exhausts, speeding, cars racing around the town centre, bikes on with a bank, which I'll come to in a moment, Councillor Rizar. So yes, and there are challenges with those stopping those kind of vehicles. I won't get away from that, but there are tactics that I probably won't go into in too much depth, since we're live on YouTube. But yes, then that's something we'll be tackling as well. Let me touch upon the HMIC report, because there's been a lot said around Lincolnshire Police and the funding. It was interesting. I've been talking to officers over the last couple of days about their personal branding, what their values are, and what they're doing this job for, what it means to them. If you asked anybody today what Lincolnshire Police's branding is, they would probably say, you're broke, you're bankrupt, you've got no money, because that is the message that we have pushed out for a long period of time. And that is the case. Without a shadow of a doubt, we are underfunded. Lincolnshire as a whole, I think, is a forgotten county. That might be controversial, but I think it is. We are underfunded. We are way behind everybody else, and we keep getting little bits of money from central government to allow us to keep ticking over. That doesn't allow us to plan years in advance and have be strategic about where we're going to put our resources. HMIC reports previous to this one, have said we're doing exactly what we can with the funding that we've got, that we are efficient, and keep doing what you're doing. Well, thank you very much. But we have gone back and said we really need some help, otherwise something will go wrong. And we've seen from this recent HMIC report probably the issues that we've had in terms of investigations, the quality of investigations, the amount of things that we can investigate, the demand that we can't respond to, the fact that we're not getting to incidents in the time periods that we should be doing. And that's really come out in this report. There are areas that we know that we can do better, certainly around investigations, as with this work ongoing around the quality of our investigative work. Neighbourhood policing came out relatively okay compared to some others. There was lots of positive recognition of good work, and in particular the Youth Hub in Boston and the partnership around that was recognised by the HMIC. So there are elements that they were, of course the headlines are taken by the negatives, but there are elements of good work that were recognised. The funding situation, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, is way above my pay grade. Whether we will get some extra funding to allow us to keep where we are in terms of officers, but I'm not sure. But there is planning ongoing for scenario worst case, medium case, and best case. And we have to do that because we just don't know what kind of situation we're going to be in. It's a difficult time for us because we need to improve in order to make that case that we deserve the extra funding that we desperately need. So there is a recognition process going on and intense work to try and improve our position. There have been some significant challenges around Boston. There's been some significant successes. I don't know if you've heard of Operation Continence, which is our operation against shop theft within Boston. Working with Boston Borough Council, CCTV, local security, Asda, Boots, Lidl, the Kingdom Enforcement Team, and going out and tackling those high volume offenders. Boston has a huge problem with shop theft compared to other areas. Really surprising. I've worked here now a couple of years and couldn't believe how big a problem it was here. So we put this operation in place, and on a regular basis, we go out with our partners. We have an analytic work done to say, right, well, these are the people we need to be targeting. This is where they're likely to be. And we've had several days of action resulting in many arrests and criminal behaviour orders. That's actually seen a reduction in shop theft in the town centre, a modest reduction of only a few percent, 3.8 to be exact. However, when you take that into context for rises in all other areas, including the other areas of Boston, unfortunately, and national rises of between 15 and 20% in the last 12 months of shoplifting, so it is making an impact. I'll come on to one of these questions as to the criminal justice system and perhaps how it doesn't quite coherently work together. It's for one of these questions that's been set. But there are significant operations going on. Operation Absence is our operation in partnership with our education colleagues to make sure that children who aren't registered at schools, make sure that they get registered. People wandering about the town are taken to their schools, tackling truancy. We've been doing that for 2 or 3 years now, and we have registered tens of kids that weren't registered, and safeguarded many others. I'm going to move on to the questions because I've already been rabbiting for about 15 minutes. So I've got some questions from councillors, and then we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. What steps are being taken to address speeding traffic on Woe Farm Road in the vicinity of St Nicholas Primary School? That's a question from Councillor Gleeson. That was raised and seen as a pattern on the last neighbourhood policing survey. That is in the nuisance vehicles priority. It's been added to the patrol plans, and you should be seeing increased activity speed checks on the Woe Farm Road area within the next priority cycle. Got a couple of questions from Councillor Izzard. Motorbikes being ridden at speed along public footpaths, Fenside and Witham. Yes, we've got the footage. We've had plainclothes officers down there. We've had one of the offenders within our grasp. Unfortunately, they managed to get away and pull the officer over, and he lovely grazed down his arm. But I hope that has deterred some of the issues down there. We will continue with those operations, excuse me, in the tackling vehicle nuisance priority and make that an area where we will target.
Yeah, would you like?
Log, I would say, a gentle log. It mostly happens after school. A couple of male riders pick up a couple of young girls and then take them up towards the country park. And they obviously come down Fenside. So, I mean, I know Councillor Marston's onto that as well. So that's the kind of peak times. It's between 3:30 and 5:30 during school term. But I will agree with you that in the last 8 days, I haven't had a report of anyone abusing it. So whether that's because maybe the older children have already left school.
You're more than welcome, and that is just in that area. We have actually seized motorbikes and electric bikes and in other areas, but that area in particular where you're talking about and you have the concerns, that was a silver moped with a balaclava, and we do have tactics that we can put in place through op exhaust. We've done tactics with RPU involving tactics that will stop bikes, but there's also tactics with drones and things like that that we can use, and we'll be putting in place. Second question, how many reported incidents of broken shop windows in the area in the last 12 months, and what, if any, action has been taken? So criminal damages as a whole in Boston Town Centre, 150 in the 12-month reporting period. From rolling 12-month reporting period from now 12 months ago. That's up from 121 last year. It's down quite significantly on what we call our baseline year pre-COVID, but it's still up in the last year. Specifically around broken windows, 14 is what I found, and I haven't had the time today to look at exactly how many have had positive outcomes. However, what I would suggest is that if you have a concern, because some of these crimes are being filtered out quite quickly for investigation, because we have to be very careful about our demand management as to what we pass through for investigation. I'll give you an example. We've had bikes being stolen outside a shop where there might well be CCTV, not necessarily council CCTV, but shop CCTV. And it's gone over a period of time, say 4 to 6 hours. Something like that might well be filtered out because we can't spend the time looking at that CCTV. To me, there's an argument to be had that it's not going to take 4 to 6 hours to look at that CCTV. You go halfway through that CCTV, is the bike still there? You go a little bit further, is the bike still there? And then you find out and what have you. So my plea to you is if you have issues with members of your community that think that there are investigative opportunities that haven't been taken, let me know and I'll make a decision on it. That's probably going against the grain a little bit, but that's what we're seeing at the moment because we are so desperate to manage our demand. It's a difficult one because we do have to do that. We can't investigate everything. We just can't. We haven't got the resources to. All crime is solvable. Every single crime is solvable if you've got the resources to put in to investigate it.
Councillor Azad?
Yeah, and thanks for that, for the statistics. Obviously, also empty shops often get windows broken, and of course there's no reporting mechanism unless the landlord or the owner actually reports such. But it seems very random, like the Church's Cafe, it was 2 windows.
I agree. Have you ever heard of broken windows theory? Has anybody ever heard of that? The broken windows theory? Yes, in New York. It would be wonderful to have the resources that New York has, wouldn't it? It would be fantastic. But yes, they were tackling very low level crime and antisocial behaviour in order to tackle the bigger stuff, because if you tackle that, pride in place, that sort of thing, which we're looking with the town board and instilling town pride in place. If you can stop those things, people come back into the town centre. The places start policing themselves almost. Are we there in Boston? No. Do we think it's the same person? No, because it might be for one or two, two or three, but some of these are, drunk people that have fallen into the windows at night, or there's been a fight, or there's been a person drunk, or there's been a person with mental health issues. So probably indicative of some other issues in the town centre as well. So yeah, there's. I understand where you're coming from, and I've been talking to PCSOs today actually. And the people on hotspots, and we need to get into a culture of not letting the small stuff go, because I think that would go a long way to helping. But having the resources to tackle all the small stuff is the issue. Okay. Questions from Councillor Noble? What is the percentage of crimes in the Boston area that lead to a successful conviction of the criminals? Okay, so I don't have the figures for successful convictions. What I do have is the figures for successful outcomes. So that can be a police charge, a report for summons, it can be a conditional caution, a youth justice referral. So there are many different outcomes that we regard as a successful outcome. And for Boston, over a 3-year period, that's 14.76%. Over the last 12 months, it's 15.14%. In the last 4 months, it's 17.7%. So those are the figures for successful outcomes of crimes in the Boston area. Would we like it to be much better? Yeah, absolutely. Of course we would. Of course.
It's on green now, thank you. Yes, why do we not have figures for successful convictions? Why not? I mean, you have figures for these other things.
We possibly do. And if you give me more time, I can probably come back to you.
Yeah,
this is what's available on my police system.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be helpful just to the committee when you have those figures. Okay. Thank you.
We have I suppose we have a system with our outcomes from our police action, and the convictions are obviously at the behest of the court. But I can probably try and find them out for you. Yeah. But we don't. I haven't found them on our police systems today when I was looking. How many people are employed at Boston Police Station? Honestly, no idea. You might have to submit a freedom of information request in relation to that. What I will say is that it's a 24-hour operation. We have patrol officers, custody officers, custody detention officers, CID, a department around protecting vulnerable people, TEO staff, town inquiry office, immigration are situated in Boston Police Station. So we've got Home Office immigration there. Intelligence officers, we've got some analysts, we've got the resource management unit in Boston. So there is a significant number of people. The follow-up question to that is what percentage of these people who are patrol officers, whether by foot or by vehicle? In terms of percentage, a small percentage, not enough in my opinion, but I'm not going to give the exact number of details of patrol officers for late shift, early shift, late shift, night shift, if you don't mind.
Do you, Chair? Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but could you give us a rough percentage, like 10, 20%, or can you do that or not?
No. I will check if I'm allowed to disclose those figures to you, but I'm not going to disclose them when this meeting is live on YouTube. Do PCSOs still exist? And if so, how many of them are there in the Boston area, and do they have the power of arrest? I've gone into the staffing levels. Yes, they still exist. We have 9 full-time positions. I've got 10 PCSOs. Some of them are part-time. Do they have the power of arrest? No. Never have had. They do have the power to detain somebody for 30 minutes whilst a police officer attends. They have several powers, which are all publicly listed. Chief Constable gives them those powers. Yeah, but they don't have the power of arrest.
Yeah, through you, Chair, mate. Yes, so you say they have the power to detain, but if the malcontent or the potential criminal doesn't want to stay, presumably they can't lay hands on them, can they?
No, it's a funny thing, isn't it? But that's not to say that we're not going to follow up later, because everything's on body worn video now. And this is what I'm talking about, not letting the small stuff go. We shouldn't accept somebody kicking off with a PCSO. We shouldn't accept somebody being drunk in our town centre. So if it can't be dealt with at the time due to whatever risk assessment, whether it's a lack of powers or whether it's a lack of resource, it should be followed up later. And that's where I want to get to. Are we there yet? No, not really. But certainly that's what I want to move towards, is tackling those small bits. And have you heard of the 5 pillars and the Safer Streets initiative from the government? You know, that's what we're moving towards. That's what I'm hoping to move towards. So do special constables still exist? If so, how many of them are there? There are 79 in total in the county. There are 6 in Boston, South Holland. There are 3 in Boston. It started off so well, didn't it? We've got 3 at the moment in Boston. There is a full review ongoing around specials recruitment and what we need to do to recruit people to this area. And it's really unfortunate that we haven't got, because the special constables are a godsend, especially when it comes to policing large events. They're brilliant. So we really need to do more in encouraging that. And I know our volunteer coordinator, I spoke to her today, says there is a review in relation to that.
Chair, if I may, through you, can I just ask, are they completely voluntary? Are they paid, or is it purely voluntary?
They're purely voluntary. They do get expenses in terms of travel expenses and uniform expenses, I believe. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're unpaid. So this is a question I could probably spend an hour on, Madam Chair. Can you explain why so many citizens have a negative view of the police? A complete contrast from the 50s and 60s. Right, shall I take my epaulets off and just tell you what I really think? Certainly societal change. I think in the decades that you were talking about, there was a respect for authority and almost a non-questioning mindset. Whereas now I think people are taught to challenge everything. No one can tell you what to do. And that's taught from probably quite an early age, I would suggest. I think there's an increase in selfishness, and I'll be brutally honest, I think there's been a moral decline over the last few decades. And we're living in what they call now, is it a post-truth society, where it almost seems to be acceptable not to tell the truth. So, and that's a difficult policing environment. Couple that with social media and the development of social media, where it is extremely easy for somebody to pick up on the negative, and it provides a forum around that. Social media seems to be a drive to feed on people's angst and anger. And therefore, you get a lot of forums where people are discovering certain videos or what have you out of context in order to make people angry. That feeds a distrust not just in the police but in authority, and you'll see it in councils and what have you. Couple that with what I deem, right, YouTube, here we go, my career down the drain, an ineffective criminal justice system where the lack of, not punishment, but effective deterrent, there is a feeling that is worth the risk in committing crime. It shouldn't be you and I paying for the criminal justice. Criminals should pay for the criminal justice system. And sometimes the being fed into the criminal justice system for criminals is actually no worse than the chaotic lifestyle that they actually lead. Couple that with more complicated investigations. Things are much more complicated than they used to be. They say, oh, we've reduced paperwork. That's not the case. It takes much longer to investigate anything these days, simply because most things are digital. You've got phones that needed to be downloaded. You've got digital footprints everywhere. You've got routers. You've got all of these things that need to be investigated. It's much more difficult to investigate anything these days. So that takes longer. With that, you risk victim attrition because people can't be bothered after a certain period. I'm not interested in this anymore. So that's a challenge in itself, more complicated investigations. And of course, the lack of resource, there's a lot of in Boston that we have to investigate. We have to employ interpreters because a lot of our inquiries are conducted in a different language. So everything is stacked against us in terms of making those swift investigative decisions. Couple that with, we don't help ourselves sometimes. We offer a poor service, we let ourselves down. And often nationally and internationally, there are incidents, I'm thinking about Sarah Everard or George Floyd, those things that gain huge traction and weight and publicity, and quite rightly so, but reflect incredibly poorly on local services like ours. Very high profile incidents, the mistakes of the past. So those international issues can become local problems. Certainly the reductions in other public services, that hasn't helped the police because the police are the service that can't say no. So if you reduce mental health services, you reduce the number of ambulances that are available, guess who has to go? The police. And that means that we're not tackling crime. We're dealing with mental health issues. We're dealing with lots of other issues apart from what we're supposed to be doing, which is tackling crime. That's improved recently with Right Care, Right Person, and we start pushing back. And the last thing I would suggest is that we don't defend ourselves well. So if something negative does appear in the press, in the media, the police are very poor at actually coming out and saying, that's not right, and defending ourselves against it. That's only my opinion. Please don't take it. The police spokesman said, but that's my honest opinion, is we should be defending ourselves more. Is that enough? I could go on, but it's a different time. It's a complete, even from when I started 22 years ago, it's a hugely different landscape in terms of policing, and a far more difficult challenge now than it was then.
Thank you, Inspector Cotton. I think that was very detailed and interesting explanation for them. Now we're open to further questions.
Councillor Gilbert.
Councillor Gilbert, please.
Working. Oh, yeah. Just to sum up my perspective, which is similar, I think, to yours, and goes back over a sort of 30-year period since I arrived in Boston in 1992. I mean, culturally, Boston was basically homogenous culturally and racially homogenous as well. That situation has changed. Now, I'm not criticising that. I'm not criticising the individuals that have come here or their backgrounds, but clearly it throws up lots of challenges in terms of the ability of places like Boston to integrate a large number of newly arrived communities. And that seems to me to kind of create a sort of spillover in terms of antisocial maybe, and maybe criminal behaviour. There's been other social changes as well. You've mentioned school children. There's a change in terms of children's attitude towards going to school. There's an increase in the amount of mental health issues that there are in the community in general, and a number of other things as well, all of which seem to be picked up by, as you've said, the police, because overall there's a shrinkage in the availability of public money for public services. And I just wonder, I mean, I personally blame governments for this, not just this government that we've got now, but previous governments as well. It's been going on for decades, this slow, remorseless decline in the provision of services. But I also think that, you know, a big problem, which I don't think the government are aware of, is the policing model that's used. And that model, I think you described it quite well, actually. I made a note of it, as demand management. I've described it in something I wrote about public services as supply management. You know,
That's Gilbert.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's Gilbert.
I don't need to be heard on YouTube particularly. I sure know put everybody asleep. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, I can blimey, I can hear myself now. So the issue is you called it demand management. I've referred to it as supply management, and the idea is that you triage the resources you've got to the needs of kind of I feel like President Bush, you know, or President Trump, you know.
Trump, yeah.
Yeah, so we end up with a situation where resources are triaged and go to the most serious offences, which is understandable, of course. Harm, risk, and threat, I completely understand.
Lot to answer there, but yes, first of all, you're absolutely right. Whether you call it demand management or supply management, you're right in terms of threat, risk, and harm. So our resources will be dedicated to the things that are the highest risk, the highest threat, and often those are the things that people in Boston town centre just wouldn't see. They're behind closed doors. They're county lines. They're people who are vulnerable to exploitation. It's human trafficking. It's modern slavery. It's those kind of things that perhaps nobody would see, but you do see broken windows. You do see somebody drunk in the town centre. You do see somebody running away from a shop with something tucked under their arm. There's got to be resources to tackle those sorts of things as well. It's just that in our organisation, it's very difficult to find those resources at the right times. Will it get better? I hope so. I mean, we really don't know, and that's the point. And that's far above my pay grade. But I know Chief Constable Gibson is right. I'm going to reinstate my career here. He is probably one of the most intelligent and thoughtful people in UK policing. And if he can't persuade people of our argument, then I don't think anybody can or will. Can we reorganise and do things better? Absolutely. Is it my ambition with the team that I've got to do more with what I've got? Absolutely. Is it the government's ambition through the Safer Streets project and the hotspot policing to tackle those low-level issues? Yeah, absolutely. Boston has its own issues, and it's not just the police are going to have to tackle it. It's going to be all of us in partnership. It's going to have to be throughout the criminal justice system. It's going to be a recognition from the courts that actually Boston needs some help. It's going to be a recognition that we need to put funding into Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership and give people the support they need. There's going to be a recognition that we need to home some of the individuals who are homeless. It's a whole partnership that's going to be needed to try and tackle these issues. We're not going to be able to do it on our own.
Good luck with it.
It's working now. Councillor Woodliff, please.
I read all the reports, and the latest one came out recently, which was from CIPFA, Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. I can never remember these things anyway. Of the HMI report, I suppose I can pick out two things. One first says the police must visit all offenders regardless of whether the force is the lead agency. And he goes on about the police have the power to enter homes, etc., etc. So by not visiting offenders, the force could potentially miss an escalation or concern and put the public at risk. That's one. And then, of course, underneath we have here, it says the force doesn't have the capacity in the right places which are affecting force performance. For example, it's not meeting response timeframes. There are delays in investigations and some specialist services lack capacity. During our inspection, we also found, this is really critical, we found that the force was extensively using overtime to meet demand. The force told us that the overtime budget was nearly exhausted mid-year. So you get halfway through the year and you've got no money left to pay overtime. It's not your fault, of course. I mean, I think everyone in here has full support for the officers on the street, all the ordinary officers and chief inspectors and all those people. We have absolutely all our respect. But there are questions about what's going on at the very top and the way money's being spent up there. Well, not just government, in the top of the police force, there are questions about how money is being spent at the top. It is picked out in the HMI report. It picked out in the HMI, the CIPFA report here as well. I mean, it's very actually a public conference. I don't, I mean, it's the matter of me. I'm just
You
the face of everybody.
you will be well aware, and I'm sure everybody around the table will be well aware of the arguments that we've had for years around the funding formula.
Yeah, I know.
And there is I don't know, promise.
Public houses, both square mile.
Yeah.
Number of bandies, terrace properties, which we have, all fits the metropolitan structure. It doesn't fit the rural structure. And rural policing is different from metropolitan. Government doesn't recognise that. They don't want to.
Well,
And the problem is they want to They don't want to give more money to people, they want to readjust it back.
If I were to put my trust in anybody from our previous chief constables, senior staff, I would put my trust in the senior staff that we have now, and Mr. Gibson. Yeah. The funding formula, we've talked about it till the cows come home. It doesn't seem to change, but there is, as you say, a critical point coming. Yeah, and what I will say from the ground, and I've got these now, I'm slightly above the ground, but you know, from the ground, is that perhaps we've let that "we're broke, we can't do what we want to do" become a mantra, and we need to swap that around. It's very difficult because the message is we haven't got. It's a true message. We haven't got enough money, but we need to keep in officers' minds. Look at what we can do with what we've got. Because if you carry on saying we can't do this, we can't do that, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What I've said to officers is, what did you join the job for? What are your values? And keep those in mind when you're going to the same person for the 20th time in 3 months, and deal with that job according to the values that you have. And if we do the right things for the right reasons on the ground, then at least we can hold our heads up high and say that we've done everything we can.
Thank you. Councillor Azad.
Hey, and I just want to take you back to when you was giving us a wonderful report and a very detailed one. You mentioned that shop theft is one of the highest in the county. Is that correct? So do you ever estimate what the actual cost to Boston town businesses is in shop theft? And is there, say, one particular kind of trader that gets attacked or has more shop thefts than the others?
So what we'll find is we've not got a total figure as to how much it will cost. I think there has been national calculations as to how much the problem costs, and we're talking billions across the country. Boston has seen a higher level. There are social issues within Boston that perhaps contribute towards that. But what we do find is that if one particular shop gets a reputation is easy to steal from, then that will become a target. And then we're in a battle with perhaps their security staff, or these are more major players rather than the small independents, as to, right, what more prevention work can you be doing, because we're tackling the offenders. And the issue partly with shop thefts is that we put a lot of work in. We will arrest individuals for several offences, take them to court, but they go through a stepped process, and they don't go up the stepped process very quickly. So when we eventually get to conviction and criminal behaviour order, they'll make a criminal behaviour order to stop them going into any shops in Boston. So they'll move to Lincoln. And guess what the people who have had a criminal behaviour order in Lincoln do? They come to Boston. So there's a flawed system, but we operate within the system that we've got. There's very little space in prison. And the length of time sometimes that people get put into prison isn't enough to sort out the issues that they face, whether it be addiction or whatever it is, whilst they're in there. So it's a difficult system to work in, but we do our best with what we've got, is what I'll say.
Thank you. Councillor Ghosh, please.
Thanks, Chair. You mentioned about digital crimes. I can share the blame because I'm in IT. Mr. Zuckerberg started Facebook to connect friends. Initially, it was Friendsbook. But now Facebook becomes intimidating pupils, bullying, harassing, and it's a sort of a digital crime. I have two questions really. The first one is, what setup you got to deal with these digital crimes? Not only this, but others as well. And second one is related to something different, which is classified drugs. I'm very much worried about this in Boston. I can if sometimes I can smell it on the air, and especially what kind of work you're doing, especially with kids, with schools, and like just to protect our kids. Thank you.
So, firstly, around Facebook, X, and many of the apps that I'm too old to understand, but kids are not. They're very accessible to children. And you're right, there's such a force, it can be used for such a force for good, but have turned into somewhat of a nightmare to police. So first of all, it's sorting through what constitutes a malicious communication or harassment. Those kind of harassments, we can offer advice. Some of the advice would be not to be on the platform, and then people turn around and say, no, I can't do that. Okay. We need to filter through things that are and not, they need to be more than annoying. There's got to be some kind of oppression or torment or serious effect for us to say, right, okay, this is worth us doing investigation time. Otherwise, a lot of those things now will be, okay, take some personal responsibility and you can manage it through these sets of instructions. So you can limit the number of hours you're on case-based, but you can limit the amount of contact you have with certain people. You can restrict you can update your security or whatever it is. Because quite frankly, we can't police all of the words and angst and battles that people have in social media. Just not possible. How do you solve that? No idea. Brutally honest, no idea. If you've got some ideas, fire away.
As technically I understand that obviously sitting in my laptop tracking, it's the only way is tracking down the IP. That's the only way. So normally there are agencies who do that, but obviously I don't know what's your digital setup.
We'll do that. If it's worth investigating, then absolutely. There's ways to track IPs, and as you say, every digital message leaves a trace. So we'll seize the evidence. We can seize devices. We can download devices. But that's another thing: is the devices to download. That takes time. When you have time in investigation, you get victim attrition, and that's a risk. So yeah, if it's and we were talking about threat, risk and harm earlier. So if there is a significant threat, risk or harm around it, then yeah, that's something for us. But those low level things, we've got to be confident in turning around saying, actually, take some personal responsibility. You can deal with this in a different way.
Sure. And regarding the drugs, yeah.
Yes. So when you were talking about smells, you're obviously talking about cannabis. Oh, come on, Mr. Innocent over there. There is a significant amount of work ongoing nationally, regionally, because a lot of the cannabis grows are organised crime. We've smashed several in Boston. We've done loads, but it's not just a Boston problem. It's a problem for every market town. The question about legalisation is far above my pay grade, but I'm sure there are discussions ongoing. But yes, tackling the organised crime element, particularly around Vietnamese Balkan involvement, the organised crime groups involved in it. We've had several cannabis grows in Boston. Are we on top of it? No, because the rewards are far great. If you've got a cannabis grow, you're going to make a lot of money out of it. That's not to say, everybody, that you can go out and start a cannabis grow. But yes, it's difficult to tackle. If what I would say is for anybody that you represent, if you have any information, if you know what to look out for, the blacked out windows, the sound of fans, when it gets to freezing point outside and frost in the windows, all of a sudden there's a load of roofs with frost and there's one that hasn't got any, let me know. Let us know, feed that intelligence in, because that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, as I said, that I'm really more worried about the kids, because they don't have that much maturity, which is right, which is wrong. They cannot, just think on that direction. So any kind of education program in school, sometimes, just telling them this is not good and all those stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. You actually just mentioned, I was wondering how the mini police are going. Yeah, we as a committee were involved in the early days in helping that start up. I mean, is it still a success? Is it still going well?
Still going well, yeah. It's still being delivered. Whether it will continue to be delivered in the future, I don't know. We're still delivering it in Boston. They're still delivering it around the county. I think the number of schools has decreased slightly. But whether that continues in its current form, I think that's part of the conversations that are ongoing. Is it worthwhile? Absolutely, it's worthwhile. Some of the subjects are really impactful to get into those kids at an early age, and it helps build those bonds. It always has done for your PCSOs and your neighbourhood policing team to get into those schools and build those relationships early on. And perhaps there are children that would never ever see a police officer and be concerned about contacting a police officer. Well, that stops it. That makes those relationships really, really early on, and it carries through the educational process. We've done some really good work with the college, and we're involved in their public services course as well. So we have input into that. We'll go and do inputs and all of that kind of stuff. So we've got some really good links.
Thank you. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine. Yes, my question relates to level of crime, and Councillor Izzard partly preempted my question, and Inspector Cotton referred to low-level crime, as did Councillor Gilbert. But there's a public perception or understanding that with regard to shop thefts, that anything under £250, a theft of anything less than that is not investigated. That's the key question. Can I just make this point about? You mentioned about school attendance. Closing the schools during COVID was an absolute disaster, and school attendance has still not recovered. But for foreign national children who do attend school, unlike perhaps the parents, they do learn the language very quickly, which bodes well, I think, for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, shop theft under £250, that's rubbish. Will get investigated. Absolutely. There's no limit. There's no set figure. What we do find is that if we don't have a named suspect, that we don't have any CCTV, that those things get finalised pretty early on at source, and it's only the ones that there's realistic investigative avenues that will get allocated out and investigated.
Thank you. Councillor Pierpoint.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the Police and Crime Commissioner, when he talks about funding and he goes public about his lack of monies and reducing numbers of police, really trying to sort of get people on his side to get more funding. But actually, the perception is I think the public feel that it's a negative effect. It's almost implying that there's going to be no police forces, not going to be able to do their job properly, and so therefore law and order is going to break down. So I don't think what he does it in the right way. And I also think it has a very negative effect. And I've spoken to different people in my community, in my ward, where they're saying that, and that then generates more crime because people think the police aren't available, aren't there. And that also ties in with what you said about the success. You don't promote your success. You're not very good at telling people how good you are, and that's another problem. So those two things together have a very negative impact because the police aren't defending themselves or telling people how many crimes they've solved, how many of this they've sorted out, or how many that they've sorted out. And so consequently, people begin to think that the police force is breaking down and is virtually just non-existent, and therefore law and order gets worse and worse and worse. So that's those 2 points. Just general observations from people I speak to.
And I think that's recognised certainly in the conversations that Mr. Gibson has had, is that we are aware of almost like a message fatigue because we've been going on about this for so long, but we can't give up on that message because there is a level where we have to have the funding in order to keep what is expected of us to keep the public safe. We can't but dip below that, otherwise we cannot provide the essential services that you would get anywhere else in the country. So we can't not hammer that message, but I do appreciate that people will say, oh, here they go again. They're on about it again. And from my point of view, as I said before, it's about trying to keep the officers motivated, doing the right things, not falling in behind that message to say, oh, well, we can't do anything. We do the right things for the right reasons, and we investigate to the best of our ability. And that's what we need to take on board from my perspective as an inspector and the people that I've got working for me.
The public don't see it like that. The public think that the police's reduction continue reducing, so therefore there's nobody on the streets looking after crime and law and order, etc. So there's a way of doing it, and I don't think they're doing it the right way. I think that's the negativity that's coming across in the communities. And I hate to say it again, but you're not promoting the successes of the things that you've actually done, and that's another area I think we've talked about that. We go on to the last thing. I have a lot of issues with the marketplace where there's too many people congregating, drinking, smoking, and all the things that they're doing, and it doesn't seem to get any better. In fact, people come to me and say it's getting worse. Therefore, it puts people off going into the town centre, and we're trying to promote the town centre. And I think that needs looking at in a bigger way. We need to have more concentration on those areas where people are frightened to go shopping, frightened to walk into the marketplace, because gangs congregating, smoking, drinking, and the smells of whatever they're smoking is putting people off. And I think that's the problem we've got, massive problem.
And I think this is one of the things that we've discussed previously, is around perceptions. It's around perceptions of safety. And what I would suggest to you is that, yes, there are people in the marketplace that are gathering, but what are they doing that's illegal that the police can tackle? I don't know. Is it antisocial to speak in another language, to hang about in a group, to smoke? It's against the PSPO to drink. That's something we can sort out. But there's very few that do. The drinkers are the ones that are in ones or twos around the corners and what have you. If you're talking about Ingram Memorial, there's not a lot of drinking that goes on there. So when you're looking at the police to solve an issue like that and people's perceptions around that, I think you're probably looking in the wrong place. And you probably need to be looking around community cohesion and how to integrate. I appreciate some people won't want to integrate, but we're about people's behaviours, antisocial behaviours and criminal behaviours. So we're almost powerless in terms of some of those issues that you talk about. And I appreciate that people do have a perception. and do feel unsafe because it comes through on surveys and what have you. But tackling that from a policing perspective is extremely difficult because we simply don't have the powers to do that unless there's antisocial behaviour. And what is antisocial behaviour? Loitering or sitting on a bench. I heard, I can't remember, somebody wanted to make loitering part of the PSPO. But what happens when Mrs. Jones sits down and has a sandwich? It's very, very difficult. And I'm open to partnership work to try and address the feelings and perceptions of people in the town. But you have to remember what we can do in terms of our powers with antisocial behaviour and criminality.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm afraid that a lot of people feel that it's intimidation, they feel it's not safe, and therefore the town generally is lacking that sort of situation where people do feel safe going shopping. I hear people say, I'll go and shop somewhere else, I don't go into Boston anymore because of all those groups, gangs and whatever. They just don't like it. And, the town is suffering because of that. We'll have to find another way then, if the police can't tackle it, some other way where we can go and look at the situation. I just don't think it's on, personally.
I think you're absolutely right that there's a perception, because I hear that as well. I think you're absolutely right that there's a perception like that. And then this, you need to have some honest conversations around that. But just remember what we are. We deal with criminality, we deal with crime, we deal with antisocial behaviour, but you're pushing it in terms of antisocial behaviour. For say somebody talking in a different language, sat in a group, or smoking, or what have you, does that make people feel intimidated? It possibly does, yeah. But is there work to be done around perceptions? I just think it's more of a partnership issue than a community cohesion issue for a group of people to identify, rather than the police problem.
I'm sure we can debate that all night. And I think if you got a load of people in Boston and sat them down in a meeting, I think you'd get the same reaction from them as you've got from me. But anyway, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
Okay. Okay. Just to pick up the point that was made by Councillor Pierpoint. I mean, I don't think there's anything that can be done about this situation, but my final
So, let me go through those. So, I agree with you. It's a resource challenge. There is funding that has gone into place from the Home Office for some hotspot patrols around Boston Town Centre. So there should be increased visibility in the town centre. We will have the community wardens as well working with our neighbourhood team. I'm hoping that that visibility will be improved. People don't often look for cops. They say they never see a police officer. The challenge of visibility is always been there, because generally we turn up when something's gone wrong. You know, we're there when something's kicked off. Yeah. You know, or we were going past and people have got their windows closed, so they won't see us. But the town centre is slightly different. So I agree, we need to be more visible in the town centre. Those hotspot patrols, I'm hoping, are contributing towards that. What I would say is that those hotspot patrols still couldn't deal with the issues that you're talking about, because they don't classify as antisocial behaviour or criminality. Yeah, it's the perception around that, and it's a really difficult question. And how we go about that challenge, I think it's been talked about previously. I think we've had conversations before about it, and I'm more than open to more conversations around how we do that. We've had Claudia, community cohesion officer, who's been out into those communities and trying to improve the integration, but it's still very, very difficult. And you have got that perception. I've heard it as well, and I hear it on a regular basis about that perception. So special constables, PTSOs are very different animals and are meant to be very different animals to special constables. They're the eyes and ears on the ground. They're the face of policing. They're two distinct. Special constables have all of the powers of a police officer, which causes some issues in itself, because a police officer takes 2 years to be trained and a special constable gets that training very, very quickly. But we need more special constables because they are worth their weight in gold. So that really needs to be, and that will help visibility. And can we get that from some of the communities that we're talking about? Can we introduce special constables from those and help our integration into those communities? Because that's been a challenge previously. We've started to get to places where we are quite well integrated with some of the migrant communities within the town. So that's a challenge for us. In terms of college and uniform services, how many become police officers? I haven't got that information. I don't know. I could perhaps go to the college and find out, but it's really good. I mean, it's public services, so yeah, uniform services included. So it's not just people looking towards police officers, but a lot of those will go from cadets onto one of those courses, could become cadet leaders, and perhaps follow the path through that. So it has happened. It's worthwhile, but it's also instilling those values through that education, our values as a police service and what it means to be in public service. And it always amazes me how great some of these kids are and how willing they are to take that on board. Wish they were all the same.
Thank you. Councillor Creswell?
About this. And we talked about this, and the parish councils, they actually said that they weren't bothered at the last meeting. They weren't bothered, didn't feel intimidated. One of them was an older lady, and she in particular was saying that she didn't find them intimidating, and she said it was about perception, and she was actually willing to challenge her friends and other people who said that there was a crime, and they used the word gangs in inverted commas. She said she actually challenged people who said that. So I think we need to be really mindful of the terminology we use. And I think as representatives, particularly of these town centre wards, we need to be challenging that narrative, like head on. We need to be saying, what's the problem? The police can't deal with them. They're not gangs. They're just, they probably haven't got gardens. They probably haven't got balconies. So they come into town to meet with their friends. And that's just where they hang out, in inverted commas. But actually, are they really intimidating? Are they, maybe we just don't like it. Maybe it's how it's different from the 50s and 60s.
And I think it's key that we tackle behaviours we can tackle. That's what we're about. We'll police without fear or favour. And if somebody is acting in an antisocial manner, or if they're acting in a criminal manner, it doesn't matter where they're from. That's what we'll deal with. In terms of perceptions and the issue we've got, obviously, is it's a whole criminal justice approach. And when we deal with them, there needs to be an effective deterrent to stop them doing the same thing again. But yeah, I'm comfortable with we deal with what we can deal with, and then it's down to a partnership approach to try and address those perceptions and those issues around those things that you're suggesting.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, obviously this is focusing this evening on the police. Thank you. Right, we're looking, if you like, for the police to be the answer, aren't we? But are we trying to, shouldn't we be going back to the root cause of the crime or the perceived crime in the first place? We've had these over the years, and I've been on, certainly on this council longer than everyone else in this room. We start to say, well, why are the gangs of people around, or people hanging around, and what's the cause of it? Well, a lot of that has been back to the accommodation they live in, and the fact that hot bedding, which I assume you all know what it is, that means when somebody gets up, then somebody else is in their bed instead. And I mean, it's, this is a well-known thing, isn't it, in Boston? I'm sorry. But also, even going back a little bit further than that, I remember somebody being so frightened the first time she heard somebody talking in a different language. It's this fear of strangers, and the fact that they were a couple of apparently youngsters, but chatting and laughing between themselves made that I think it was a lady or a girl even feeling, oh, they're laughing at me. It's, and then there's also hearing different languages. You see, if we go back to when all this started, we didn't sort of think, right, well, let's go in and get the police in. What about trying to educate our native population a little bit? Because it takes two sides, really, I think, to get this sort of situation. And all right, we acknowledge that we have got a lot of issues, but it's that fear of crime. And we've always known here that although everyone says, oh yes, Boston's the worst place for crime in the county, well, it's not, is it? It never was. We were about number 6 or something in the list. And I'm sure things haven't changed that much. So, all right, I applaud what you as the police are doing, but are we, the public, perhaps, needing to educate our citizens?
There's some really interesting things that you mentioned there. I'll pick up on the hot bedding and migrant workers and somebody sleeping for 8 hours, then somebody who comes in on a different shift goes into the same bed. So, a lot of work being going on in relation to housing gangmasters through the GLAA. I can't remember even what it stands for now. But there's a whole organisation around gangmasters, association. There's a whole lot of work that we do in partnership with immigration, and trying to tackle those people who are exploiting in the labour in the wrong way. So people who aren't getting paid properly. So that's another area of high risk that generally people around the table wouldn't see. You see what's happening in the town centre, but you don't see what we're doing in relation to those sorts of issues. I think you're right about culture, different cultures, and how particularly the Romanian and then Bulgarian culture can be, when they converse, it can almost be as though they're angry with each other, they're shouting with each other, which could reflect on the perceptions and in the intimidation, and I get that. But it's not antisocial and it's not criminal. So how do we deal with those sorts of things? So yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to come in on this one as well. Obviously, I've had the complaint, what I put into to you both. There's also the point that people go to the stump to remember their loved ones when the stump's lit up. And we had an incident the other day where they did, but they stayed for 5 minutes because they felt intimidated and there was things going on, which has been reported and it has been looked into. But so maybe we need to educate the people that are sitting in the market, in the place, as well as to, they probably don't know why people go to the stump. They probably don't know that people go there to respect their loved ones, you know. So I think it works both ways. I think we all need to educate each other. I think that's more to the point than anything. Thank you. Right, one more question from Councillor Woodliff, please, and then we'll get on with the rest of the night. Thank you.
We moved to Boston in 1988, and I can remember being told by the person who, I think it's people, you know, neighbours, whatever, don't go into Boston and on Saturday afternoons because it's ever so violent. Well, actually, it wasn't. We've often gone to Boston and have ever since gone to Boston on an afternoon, Saturday afternoon. Obviously, if you go to certain public houses, there might be a problem there, but you pick where you go, don't you? And I don't think actually Boston's more violent or more dangerous than other places I worked. I worked in Leicester for a long time. That's a pretty rough city. And so I don't think Boston matches that. But I want to come back to the HMI report, really, because I appreciate your loyalty to the Chief Constable, Paul Gibson. But it does say in the report, senior leaders in the force haven't had enough control over strategic planning and oversight since our 2021 inspection. The lack of effective governance and management of the force performance has negatively affected almost all areas of the force. And it's a very damning statement, really. You know, and I think it goes back to the people at the top. I don't think they've been running it properly. I know we're very short of money, and I think everyone knows we're short of money. And I do believe you need to pay much more money, you know, to have our communities policed properly. I don't think we have it on the you know, on the nod. We have to pay more taxes to have better policing, like so many other things. Low taxes have a payoff in the end. You don't have the services. And I think that's a very unpleasant political statement to make, but it's a reality. But I still am concerned about what's going on at the top. So I don't quite have all your confidence in the people at the top. I obviously am very concerned and want to pursue those issues at the top. Okay?
Yes, and those concerns are over a period of time. I would suggest that Mr. Gibson's not been here that long and has inherited a situation that perhaps he wasn't expecting when he came back from Derbyshire. And he says that policing in Derbyshire it's so different to policing in Lincolnshire simply because of the resources available. And when you are living hand to mouth, and when you are getting certain little grants to keep you going, it's very difficult to plan strategically over a period of time when you don't know what the budget's going to be. You simply can't do it. So for the HMIC to turn around, here we go, career ended again. For the HMIC to turn around, thank you. Yes, you do that.
The HMI's report, I think, was actually triggered because the Peace and Crime Commissioner ran a JR, judicial review, against the Home Office. And I think that the Home Office reacted accordingly as a defence mechanism. And I think that's probably triggered some of the criticisms here. I don't mind attacking the government. don't mind attacking anybody. Well, I do. You're here. You might arrest me. But well, perhaps you should arrest me. I don't know. I'll just criticise, put everybody inside. But I don't think you get something for nothing. And you have to pay to have the policing you want. Like you have to pay to have the courts that you want and all the other and the prisons that you need, perhaps. All those things have to be paid for. And we have a problem in our society that we've tried to do the wrong thing, in my opinion. We've tried to cut the costs and it hasn't worked out. And now we have the penalty. So
I think
that's my position.
You've hit a nail on the head when you say, but I would argue that you as taxpayers and council taxpayers shouldn't have to pay more money because the funding form is unfair and the money should be coming from a different source in order to make us at least equitable with our similar forces in our similar force group. But
it won't happen because the metropolitan police services or police areas are holding on to their cash, like Manchester and so on. They've got vast reserves and they want to keep their cash, their loot in the bank. They don't want to give, more money to the rural areas, because they lose out. So they make an argument to government, and because government listens to more rural areas, to metropolitan areas more than rural ones, that's the way it's gone. It's a very, very serious situation. I think people need to be worried. I hope they are, because the situation is critical, and therefore people need to react to it. So I'm aware perhaps people might be concerned about the situation. They need to be concerned. The report I've read this report and the SIPRA report that came out very recently, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to have a meeting with the policing crime panel. I think it's next Friday to discuss it. But there is a question mark about the control at the top. So I mean, I think Paul Gibson, when he spoke to me, he said that he couldn't believe that Lincolnshire Police's finance was so bad until he got here, when he realised it was even worse than he thought it was. More threadbare than I think was a comment than he thought it would be. So the situation is very, very serious, and I don't know where it's going to go. Well, sorry. Anyway,
no, you're right, and as you say, strategic planning is almost impossible in that situation. Yeah. But I'll come back to your point around somewhere like Leicester, and the problems that they face there. Completely different. Yeah, absolutely right. Boston's not in that scenario, but Leicester has resources to put into those issues. All I can say as an inspector is we will continue to try and put the right people in the right places and have our values at heart to do the right things and serve our community. And I can't do anything about the finances. I'll just have to work with what I've got.
I understand. Be happy.
Thank you, Inspector Cotton, for your time and your update this evening. Thank you to you and your officers for the work that you do on behalf of all the residents of Boston. And I think it's been really interesting. And thank you so much because you've explained everything so well. Thank you.
Chair, can I ask a question? Is it possible to ask a question? What's the protocol about people leaving the meeting? Do they have to get permission before they walk away off the meeting or not? They just walk out. Okay, I'm not talking about the guest, I'm talking about the councillor who went off earlier.
Just to remind everybody, we're still being recorded. Thank you. The next item is the work programme, which starts on page 7 of the agenda pack. I will ask Phil to provide more information.
Thank you, Chair. Members will note that the work programme has been updated to include a report on future BTAC events, which will be considered in September. And in addition, the Lincolnshire Housing Partnership has now confirmed that it will address the committee at the November 27th meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any observations for the work programme, please?
Okay, I'll just repeat. So in terms of the work programme, the BTAC events report will be considered in September, and the Lincolnshire Housing Partnership has confirmed that it will address this committee at the November 27th meeting.
Has anybody any observations from the work programme? No. Right, comments have been recorded by, oh no, we don't need that, do we? BTAC's, I would like to invite Phil Perry to present the report on the BTAC's small empowered communities.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out, sorry, the proposed distribution of grants in this round, and Appendix 1 has the relevant details.
Thank you. I will now open the meeting for comments and questions, please. Note that if anyone wishes to discuss the appendix, we will need to go into a private session. Do you want to talk about the appendix? Okay, Councillor Noble, yeah, go ahead.
Does it have to be, thank you, does it have to be a charity or not? Can you elaborate on that? Or sorry, can our Assistant Director elaborate on that? What the criteria are for small grant applications?
Basically, there is a protocol that is in place. It is subject. It was reviewed at a previous meeting, which we can provide the details behind that. But basically, there is a working group that meets to go through, and you'll see that the committee, the recommendations of the committee approve the grant funding awards recommendations made by the BTAC grants working group in respect of eligible applications.
Yes, thank you. And that follows on to my next question. Will any new applications be considered in round one, which is according to this 2025 to 26, or is that it? That the small grants committee, working group committee will not meet again, or is that wrong?
The committee meets, the working group, sorry, meets a number of times a year. There are 4 rounds in the year.
Okay. Right. Yes. One other question. Well, it's not. It's just a question about what's in. It's just a phrase. It's not, which is about. We have a pie chart here on page 15, and we've got a green section. In what does influence +2? What does that mean? That's on page 15.
I can assume this has been generated through a report programme. We'll give you an update on exactly what that element means in the minutes.
Yeah, a couple more actually. Oh no, I can't because it's about Appendix 1. And no, I can't ask that question now, can I? Because no, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Would anybody like to talk about the appendix? Yeah. Do I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour, against, any abstentions? Thank you, carried. That concludes tonight's business. So I would like to close this meeting. The next meeting on the 25th September. Thank you all for attending.